Well, it seems like it's been a very long time, and it's totally my fault. But I am at the Port of Shelton, checking in with Wendy and Brandon. Wendy Smith, the executive director. Brandon Palmer, what's your title now?
I'm the engineering manager.
Man, I love it. We've talked over these forever, as long as I can remember being at the radio station. We've had port updates and port conversations, and over the years, so much has happened here. And it continues to happen. People, as they drive by now, they see the incident base camp for Bear Gulch Fire in some of the open areas. You may, too, notice that the taxiways are being paved in a big project that's happening right now. And it's just a continuation of growth at the port. So, Wendy, give me a little overview for folks who maybe are new to what the port does and sees the port on a daily basis, either here or Johns Prairie when they drive around. What's kind of your footprint these days, the additional businesses that rent here, stuff like that?
Sure. Happy to do that. We're excited because we've just grown a lot, I think, since even the last time we talked. But yes, our footprint here at Sanderson Field is probably just over 1,000 acres, I'd say, more like 1,100. A lot of which is vacant land, but we have a very varied mix of tenants. So we have the airport, of course, and hangars that go with that. And we have a brand new hangar. The most recent hangar building was built by actual private party, Island Lake LLC. And so they approached us and asked for permission to build that hangar. So that was exciting. Hangars are a very wanted accessory to an airport wherever you look in the state.
Right.
They are a wanted commodity. So that was great. Add to our current hangar availability, as well as we have a business park. Pesty Business Park is renamed now, and we have several 5,000 square foot warehouses. We host, we have private companies that do medical devices that are microscopic. We have Thermedia does like a medical mask with foam, different things, and kind of getting into some different markets with that. We have Sims Vibration, who's been here a long time tenant, and they do dampening for bows for hunting. They're also getting in the pet market with leashes and dampening, the pull on your limbs, which is great. So hence the name Limb Saver.
Limb Saver, that's right.
But add to that, we've kind of dabbled into some new things most recently, and that's, we have a coffee stand right on the corner, and that's just been a great addition. They are just jammed, so it's real near the Tractor Supply Company, right off of 101 at our main entrance, and just been fun to see that growth. And in and among that, then we're currently in architectural design phase of remodeling a building that the port purchased a few years back for Olympic Mountain Ice Cream to move their whole processing operation to Sanderson Field. So that'll allow them to grow, basically. They're currently housed and outfitted near their parents' home, who started the company, and in order to grow that company and do a lot of the processing that they currently ship out, they're able to do that right here. So that's exciting, and should be this fall. We're looking at going out to bid on that project and getting that done. What else? And then you venture out Johns Prairie. We've got just shy of 400 acres at Johns Prairie. And of course, Lynch Creek Farm is the dominant presence out there. And they just keep growing and have expanded into the most northern site right up against Johns Prairie Road. And I think Lynch Creek occupies... I think it's about 160,000 square feet of building space now, and just continues to grow year after year. We also have Pyro, Spectacular North, and they don't let off fireworks at that facility, but they store their fireworks, and there's a whole host of things that go with that, including space requirements, storage requirements, and but they do many of the major shows that everybody's seen, whether it's a Mariners game, a Rainiers game, Space Needle events at New Year's Eve or whatever. They're involved typically in the background of those. Shear Brothers, long-time tenant, the chipping, and we've got quite a host of cannabis tenants out there as well. I think the last interview we did was at Belco Forest Products.
Oh, yeah.
And Belco is a little ways down the road from our Johns Prairie proper, and we just did utilize some curb funding to partner with them to add additional square footage to one of their existing warehouses and on port property, and paved, and so that was able to allow them ability to store their product on site versus having to cart that over to Johns Prairie, and they still utilize our rail, which we have a short line rail out there, so we kind of fulfill the transportation end of what ports do. You know, we have rail, we have airport, and then, of course, we have our properties that we house industrial tenants.
It's really exciting to hear all the long-term, the stability that you, I'm sure, enjoy for folks that have been here for years, but also have these 5,000 square foot kind of, I remember talking with you and Commissioner Taylor about kind of the incubator buildings where folks can kind of test their hand at whether or not their business may or may not be successful, and then how you can grow upon that. It's really exciting to see how many jobs come from businesses on port property. Of course, we know that, you've got access to 101 and it's close, half hour or so to I-5-ish, and to get onto the highway that way, and then some of the fastest internet in the state here as well. So the technologies, how that's changed over the years that we've talked, to include fiber is like, well, you got to have it. It's backbone kind of a thing now these days. One thing too, people often will see on any sort of a nice day are the parachutes that come down. Obviously, Kapowsin Skydive, and then next to that is that other new building, the Squirrel Suits folks. So there is you're right, a wide variety of uses and things that people utilize the port for. So Sugar Bean is on port property. Yep. Tractor Supply, is that on port property? It's just outside port property.
Yep, there's a little
and you see folks at Kapowsin every day, and it's sometimes packed on the weekends, but I guess they would be a retailer in a sense, like you can buy shirts and stuff, but Sugar Bean for sure is like one of your main first forays into this type of work. I saw the update from Olympic Mountain on Mason Web TV, and how they talked to the commissioners about all the things that are going on. And again, some people are commenting, asking about retail. Yeah. That's a thing, right? So there will be opportunities to taste the ice cream. Yeah,
the plan is for that. So, of course, we're, still kind of in that design phase. And it hasn't gone to bid, but they are fully hoping.
That's the hope, at least.
Yeah, to have a little scoop shop in the midst of that. So, it could be exciting.
How did the incident base relocation from Oakland Bay to here happen?
Just word of mouth. I think we've housed many fire camps throughout my time here and well beyond. But as soon as that fire got to the federal level, more or less, it was still housed by the state DNR, but as soon as it hit that federal level, they were looking for increased acreage for their because their numbers were growing rapidly, and school was gonna start. So they had a deadline to get off of school property, and I think the fear of having to do that with a tight deadline, so they approached us pretty early on. It was the end of July that they contacted us. We talked about a couple different sites, one where they are, and also the former fairground site, just thinking maybe they wanted to be, kind of out of the, not in the middle of the action, but they chose the fields, kind of right in this center, and it's worked well. But they are on the fields there, if you've seen further towards the airport property, they're also have, I can't remember what they called it, but they're, a truck parking area, and so they called it a specific name. But anyway, their footprint's large. It's good. It's big.
What kind of resources do they utilize? Do they take water? I mean, is there anything?
They are using our water, but beyond that, they are pretty self-serving.
Isn't that
they
something?
have food trucks, shower trucks, meeting trucks, sleeping tents. Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, they are pretty. It's like a city.
I've been reporting on the Bear Gulch Fire, since the 6th of July when it started, and the numbers of fire personnel reached probably around 500, I would say, maybe a little bit more than that. It's slowly starting to work its way down as it's changing phases in their work. I think a question, and you addressed it before we started, was, how will that impact any OysterFest? We're about, less than a month now from kind of that kickoff, and that's traditionally been overflow parking for them. I think I was talking with OysterFest too. They says, well, we're working with the port on that.
Yeah. Right away when we housed them there, that was the one consideration that could be in the way. So we met with them early on and determined another viable Plan B, which is right along Highway 101 across from Kapowson. So if we needed to. It looks more like we most likely won't need to utilize that, but we still have that option if need be. So
cool.
Yeah.
Brandon, you and I have talked over the years about the different projects here on the port property, specifically in the airport area. We did a kind of a walk around after the Sawtooth building burned down and kind of what's going on there. And I think in addition to that, all the projects that the FAA requires to maintain this as a working airport for pilots who come in, not just Kapowson on their skydive, things for folks to do there, but people utilize this airport. And what are some of the updates on the different stuff that we've talked about?
So we have awarded officially to Mountain Construction for the SF building replacement project. So that was, it was a little over 4 years ago that we had that catastrophic fire that burned down about 32,000 square feet of that old Sawtooth roofs.
4 years ago?
Yeah.
My gosh.
It's been a long process to get to this point.
I bet. What have been some of the considerations? I mean,
So insurance was a big one.
Okay.
We had to kind of validate the value of what was lost and value that based on current code. So if we were to replace that exact structure but meeting current code, what would that be worth? So that took a whole team of consultants.
I bet.
And an independent estimator, that was representing the insurance underwriters and whatnot. So once we finally decided on that, we also had to work on, okay, what's the value of all the lost rents and other, costs associated with that. We lost power to the adjacent part of the building that didn't burn down as a result of the fire, and so we had to redesign and then build that new power feeder, which was, huge. It's 2,000 amps of 480 volt power, so not a small project. So anyway, Mountain Construction is the new contractor that's going to be doing that work for us. They've done a lot of work in the area. They're highly qualified. They did a project for Taylor Shellfish not too long ago, a really big job for Cardinal Glass, and lots of others. But yeah, we met with them actually last week. We had our pre-construction conference. We had actually 8 different alternate bid items for that job, partly because we aren't entirely certain who the tenant will be in the building, but the building is designed for heavy steel fabrication and manufacturing. It'll have 2 15-ton top-running bridge cranes right down the center of the building with a 70-foot wide span and a 30-foot high pick height on the crane. So be able to do some serious heavy lifting, and the whole slab is reinforced, like 12 inches of reinforced concrete, I think it is. So, and then the center bay has a large biparting door, and then there were a couple alternate bid items for 2 more of those doors. We decided to award on one of those.
So how did you come up with what you wanted to be in there? I mean, it sounds like just a Christmas wish list of, I'd love to have this. Because beforehand, it was a old building, like from the 40s and 50s, no?
Well, it was built in the late 70s.
Oh, okay.
1979, 1980, somewhere in there. And it was built for and by Certified Aerospace, so it was for heavy steel manufacturing back in the day.
Oh, okay.
But they mostly used it as a machine shop back then, so it had lots of giant pieces of equipment. And it had a couple of cranes in there, but they were small and didn't have a lot of capacity or anything. And then, after they kind of downsized and that changed ownership over the years and stuff, that building was kind of hard to rent for us for a long time because it had a whole lot of interior columns in the way, and it wasn't, insulated or real nice. It wasn't built on with a flat floor even. It was built right on the old tarmac, which slopes considerably. And it was just rough concrete, And so, the commission and the port really wanted to see more of that manufacturing coming back here to the airport because at one time they employed probably 400 people.
Right.
And now, there's just a small, 45 maybe?
Yeah, he's about at 45. Yeah, true fab. Yeah.
So we'd like to see that grow back, hopefully somewhere near that original 400 number, ideally. And so we kind of looked at what are some of the limitations of the existing facility where that work is still being done. And I think they have 5 cranes in there, and they can do a lot, and they have done a ton in that true fab facility. But one thing they've been lacking is a crane with enough pick height to be able to do really large jobs and one with enough capacity to lift super heavy things. And so we decided to incorporate that into this building.
Sure.
So there's that project. That's awesome to see happening here.
Well, and if I could just jump in real quick, one of the hurdles when you think about time frame and, the fire happened in 2021, what took us this long, one of the biggest hurdles, I think, was working with the FAA. They were demanding, it's right next to the tarmac.
Yeah.
Basically, that building was built on the tarmac. Why, this needs to be aviation. Well, as we've talked over the years, that's not, unlike a Boeing or, SeaTac, really, we are so small, we don't make a lot of money on, hangars that just house a plane. We don't have large businesses that build planes or bring in, lots of planes. So for us, that wasn't our bread and butter, and we had to define that. And we had a team that was supposed to be like 6 FAA officials come down, and we had to tour them and show them and explain why. And again, that issue of the fairgrounds property, that you have all this property and everything else could be something else, but why would you not build something aviation related? And we said because that's not where we can house a large
part of
tenant.
A big part of it too is that in order to get the full insurance proceeds, we needed to rebuild in the same location.
Yeah.
And that area has been non-aeronautical use for more than 50 years. Really, basically 1942 is when those old hangar buildings were built in that area. Uh-huh. This one was eventually built and then attached to that original barrel vaulted roof. It looks like a barrel laying on its side kind of building. But yeah, our airport master plan, the previous one and the ones before that, showed it as non-aeronautical use. That was all approved by FAA. So we were actually really surprised when they told us they were likely to deny our request to rebuild that building and for continued non-aeronautical use.
So you mentioned maybe some folks come in and take a look. I mean, do you also talk with your colleagues in those state port associations and be like, we need some help here. We're small. You're small. We're not, again, Boeing. We don't have all these billionaires with airplanes that need space or whatever, this and that. We have to diversify, or else this isn't even going to be a functioning opportunity for the FAA.
Yeah, whenever we told the story, it was obvious.
Yeah.
And we talked to other ports, we talked to groups around here, leaders around here. I reached out to the federal contingency Congress, just, hey, help, what can we do? And it ended up sorting out itself. And I think, the FAA, once they realized, and, we are bound, though. I mean, we can only do a lease for 30 years, and then it has an option, right? Or 20 years with a 10-year option, I think. So, again, after that 30-year span, we'll be able to reassess. We're not going to just, oust someone. But I think what we were trying to help them understand is, for instance, TrueFab. So if we get a company that works like TrueFab does a big majority of their work for Boeing. So
it's airline adjacent.
Is that not aviation?
Aviation adjacent.
So that's what we are trying to, first of all, it's gonna, it's gonna bring jobs that are so desperately needed, and we can utilize, and then it's gonna also have a company that is actually doing some kind of product, not just housing an airplane, for instance. So.
And they're busy too, so it's probably not like you can just go, all right, let's get this answered today, and so we can move forward.
Yeah.
It's a process.
It took months and months to get their approval, and it was dicey there for a while, but we finally did succeed, thankfully.
Yeah.
I mean, it's important for them to know that we need buildings that can provide a maximum amount of revenue. That way, we have matching funds to pay for these, FAA funded projects, because every one of them, requires 10% be local funding. So that's either us, or it's us and DOT Aviation, which they typically put in 5% whenever the budget allows, and we really appreciate that. And
and they have huge requirements. The project that's going on now, it's not like you just go, well, we're going to put some blacktop over the thing and hope for the best. It's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
To comply with a lot of what they want to see for safety for airplanes.
And FAA paving standards are extremely stringent. I mean, way harder to meet than DOT spec. Right now we're paving all the taxiways. So we have the parallel taxiway that's parallel to the runway. That's Taxiway Alpha. That's basically full-length taxiway. Then there's all the connector taxiways. And then one of those is Alpha 1, which is the one that goes along the hangars. So all of those are getting paved, and then we're putting taxiway edge lighting in, which we've never had before. So that'll be medium intensity LED lighting, and then a whole bunch of lighted signage as well goes with that. So that's about a $4.3 million project that doesn't directly generate revenue. So for the port to try to do that on our own, that's just not feasible, right?
And these are also probably, maybe not, but these are also standards that come from them, either based on the population size of the area or kind of standard practice when it comes to lighting and signage and things like that. If you're going to see the same, because, if pilots are going to fly from here to there to wherever, they want to be, I'm assuming, know that they're going to see the same signage. Yeah, exactly. So they understand where they're going to need to turn and things like that.
Yeah, all of it is very strictly regulated, and there are different, FAA design manuals for airports. And that's all based on the category of aircraft and the size of aircraft and your, the speed of your approach, which is based on the size of planes that you're designing to and that are utilizing your airport. So that that determines the width of taxiways, the distance from a taxiway to a runway, your object-free areas for taxiways and taxi lanes, your runway protection zone. There's a whole lot to this, and it's all very geometric and kind of laid out as to how you do it all. So another thing we're doing right now is the airport master plan. So it's a new master plan. It's about a $500,000 project, and it kind of looks at all of our projects and first it looks at our existing facilities. It kind of does some forecast work on how much activity we think is going to grow over time and what size planes those are and things like that. Then it looks at the next 20 plus years of projects. It kind of comes up with a way to plan for those and which order, which ones are most important, how should we phase them, what are the approximate costs for all that. Soon, we haven't chosen dates yet, but soon we're going to have our first public meeting on that project where we're going to show to the public our different design alternatives for what the future holds for the airport. We actually just shared a couple of those preliminary sketches this morning with FAA when we had what's called a CIP meeting, a construction in progress meeting, where we're kind of negotiating our next 5 years of projects and associated budget with them.
But again, that too then has to match up with what they think
with their priorities.
This type of property should be used for. So if you say, we want to build, I don't know, something, and they go, well, there's no reason for that to be in aviation.
Right.
They have ultimately one of the final says because of the backing that the FAA provides to the port here. Wow.
Yeah, they absolutely have approval authority over any airport project. And they even have approval authority over many things that have nothing to do with the airport just because it's airport land.
Right.
Federally deeded property, you know. So, yeah, we can't just go out there building our own taxiways however we want to or anything. It's a stringent process to follow for sure.
Huh.
And there's a lot of environmental associated with it. So, one of the projects on our 5-year CIP right now, kind of one of our higher priorities is building a connector taxiway to the former fairgrounds site south of the runway. We leased that land to Mason County for a 50-year term. That ended years ago. And all those buildings were demolished. We're ready to develop that site for aviation use, and now, federal funding is tight for sure right now. And we're competing on all these bigger projects. You're competing for discretionary grant funding that goes above and beyond the entitlement money that we get every year as a Nipias airport. So we get $150,000 every year, and you can let that build up. I think up to 6 years or something.
Before.
But for a larger job like taxiway paving or runway paving or anything really large, a bunch of work on the apron, for instance, the cost of that far exceeds that little entitlement money.
Sure.
And so then you're going after discretionary money, and that is competitive. And you're competing with all the airports in the nation, actually, that are Nipias airports, not just the local ones. And their priority is based on runways are most important, obviously, for an airport, followed by taxiways, and then aprons, and then taxi lanes are lower than that, and hangars are really low on their list, even though hangars are absolutely crucial to an airport's viability. And everyone with a decent plane wants a hangar, of course.
So with these new Island Lake LLC hangars, is it people, and I'm just assuming because of the name, is it people that live on Island Lake that have planes, or do they have maybe 1 or 2 slots and then you rent out to them or to other folks, people who have? Or how does
developer's name is Island Lake. So, I think they live in Island
you can
Lake,
name anything.
But they're hoping to sell the hangars, the space inside. So we have in and among our hangar supply, the port owns we own 4 of the hangar buildings, and then 2 of them are privately owned by what they call condominium associations. So we have 2 of those, and they basically, the owners inside own their own little condo within that 16-place hangar building. So
kind of like when you guys had the port and you had the little boathouses and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Similar. Yeah.
Okay.
So the association has a land lease with the port, and then as the condo changes hands, we sign off on that, but we really don't. The only thing is once that dissolves or goes away, that building becomes port property over time, which is how it works with all of our buildings, or private owned. So that's the nature of how they built this building. Now they're not opposed if they don't sell, to someone, then they would potentially lease to them.
Yeah.
And that's outside of, anything that we're doing on our end. But
are there a lot of people in Mason County that need space for this? Is that where people park them or what?
Yeah, they're coming from all over, though. I mean, there's just a demand at every single airport. And as airports grow, some of the airports grow, then the GA or smaller airplane, private-owned airplanes, they're kind of getting shifted out. And so outlying areas like our airport or Bremerton or Olympia, they're all faced with this demand that is greater than the amount of hangars that are there. So we have people from Olympia and Bremerton and all over the place, Shelton, in our hangars. It just, we have a waiting list that's probably 25 long.
Huh.
Yeah.
Do you have to have them enclosed? I mean, can you do like carports or?
There are some. We don't have any.
Right. I think there's some in Olympia.
Olympia has some, yeah. And that's pretty common and just like boat houses and then covered moorage. But yeah, our airport we haven't done that. But
that's
we do have
wild.
open, tie down areas, but we don't have any covered.
I mean, I can see you're spending hundreds of $1,000s at least on these things to buy and then maintain. You don't want to just leave them out.
Yeah.
Put a tarp over them for winter or something like that.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And hangars are really expensive to build. The last one we did was in 2008, 2009. I think it cost us about $900,000. Today it would cost a whole lot more than that.
Right.
So if you figure, you can do the math pretty quickly and find out how many decades it would take for you to get your money back out of that.
Yeah.
Lease rates, and it's hard to prioritize doing that when you could also be building buildings and putting people to work and enhancing commerce in the community.
So are you still focused a lot of the outlying outside of the runway area, kind of where the conservation district is or the Sportsman's Association? Does the FAA have as much say in that part of the port property, or is it mainly because these are right button up against where the?
Yeah, definitely there's more of an airport proper, but they do have a say. So, they really are entitled, or they can look over any lease of any property and should be okaying any of those. Of course, it becomes obvious up by Mason Conservation or any of those buildings that, there's not going to be a taxiway.
Yeah, there's trees and there's an elevation change.
We
and
can
all
make
sorts.
that argument pretty clear. But yeah, they have a say over this whole property.
Wow.
And anything made on this property stays on this property. We aren't allowed to make money here and go spend it at Johns Prairie.
Yeah.
Now, Johns Prairie could make money and we could spend it here. But yeah, it's very, we have to prove that to the state auditor every year. Or, maybe not every year, but yeah.
How full up is the Johns Prairie area if you were to say we have the potential space we have this many acres available? Because you said 100 and some odd thousand square feet of space for Lynch and Belco
we have
and things
more.
like
We
that.
have probably 200 acres, more than 200 acres available that's basically undeveloped at Johns Prairie still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a
Lots
lot of potential
vacant.
out there.
Just not a lot of, we just don't have buildings
Right.
as much as
Yeah.
we do here, yeah.
I mean, because too, you're looking and competing with other places too for folks to think about wanting to come here, and all the.
And there's been a lot of potential projects that have looked seriously at that property.
Yeah.
Some of them were, huge developments. None of those have actually happened yet, but at some point one may.
Yeah. And what do you guys do to? The EDC puts out papers and they have things for folks to go look at, and I know a lot of that is very secret. But what do you guys do to push out the benefits of coming to Johns Prairie, for example, versus?
We haven't done a ton. It's more word of mouth.
Yeah.
And like you said, EDC gets the leads from commerce. We've, it's just happened that people hear about. There's not a lot of commercial / industrial land left. And so I think, that's this close to I-5 and that's, not in the middle of, nowhere. And so I think those that are looking, they know. And so we get a lot of calls just based on that. Just, oh my gosh, you know, and then as you dissect through it, you know, what exactly are you looking for? And a lot of times, you know, we've had interest from, you know, data centers, and, you know, so it would be a giant sized building that would take huge amounts of power, but not a lot of people, you know, and so it would use a lot of resources, you know, so there's been that kind of conversation. There's been others that won't tell us what they're really looking for, but they need 200 acres and they need, you know, and so it just kind of is variable. But yeah, we don't do a lot of marketing of it. We just signed on actually to CoStar and the LoopNet, you know, site, because we do have some vacant buildings, and more than we've had in recent years. And so we thought, well, let's just start to push those out, and EDC has links you know, on their site to those. And so that's more than we've typically done. But yeah, we just haven't really had to. And you know, I heard once before that a lot of your growth happens within. Right. So a lot of times, like Lynch Creek, you know, or Belco, when they were occupying some of those sites, you know, they're growing their company within and remaining rather than someone, you know. But we had a guy just recently, right after 4th of July weekend, and he just happened to drive by our property and just went, oh my gosh. And he actually has a business. I don't know if he's the owner, but he is associated with a business in Kent, and just said, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. He was just camping with his family, you know, drove by, looked on our website. We have now listings on our website. Yay, Tiffany. But, and saw that, oh, we might have some stuff available. Started asking questions.
That's
and
great.
So, yeah, it's just, you know, you just never know. So, yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, too, with the port, it's, like I said at the beginning, with kind of those mainstays that have been here, it's growth. It may not be, you know, expansive growth that you see overnight, but it's that slow, consistent growth, like adding the third shift.
Yeah.
And things like that to the businesses here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we'll continue to keep our eyes on the meetings. Mason Web TV, Diedrich does a great job with those, putting them out there. And, of course, the public is welcome to come and see. It's an open government agency. It's good to see you guys. It's been too long. It's been too long.
Yeah, we'll keep up on all this.
Yeah, for sure. Keep me posted on things that are going on. And we'll continue to update folks here at the Port of Shelton. It's a beautiful location, and again, it has great amenities for folks that are looking. Yep. So, very cool. Well, it's good to see you guys.
Good to see you too.
Great to see you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah.